and get paid to do so, meaning you can deliver packages and make that those sweet greenbacks off of doing that. Amazon today, according to The Verge, launched a new service that pays part-time drivers in exchange for delivering packages. The service is called Amazon Flex, and it's launching today in Seattle. It's going to be coming soon to Manhattan, Chicago, and 7 other U.S. cities, according to its website. We don't know which cities those are, but we can assume that Chattanooga is not going to be one of them, unfortunately. I wish I could say that it would be, but usually they go for a bigger market than what we've got here. Remember, Chattanooga is a medium market, so you don't usually see a whole lot of test products like that one here, unfortunately. The Guardian's reporting that Amazon Flex appears to have taken its cue from Uber and other gig economy-based services. Drivers will be paid $18 to $25 an hour, not bad, to deliver packages ordered with Amazon Prime Now. Now, the thing is, chances are you're not going to be driving for an hour to deliver these packages, or at least more than a few hours to deliver these packages. So you might get paid like $25 a day. You know, it's not that bad, though, to be quite honest. That's not a terrible price to get paid. I mean, I would not turn down somebody asking me to drive somewhere for $25. So you can't really fault it. So the company's 1-hour delivery service is what this is a part of. It's though the site is suggesting that it will eventually expand to include other Amazon deliveries. To qualify, drivers must provide their own car, their own Android smartphone, no iPhones, none of that Apple proprietary nonsense. And that's your own Android smartphone, and they have to pass a background check, which you can probably do because you're probably not a felon. They can choose to work for 2, 4, or 8-hour shifts. Also not bad. Amazon says the service will allow drivers to earn extra money on their own schedule, echoing other sharing economy-based services. Be your own boss, the site's tagline reads. Deliver when you want, as much as you want. But the growing industry has come under criticism and legal pressure, of course. Uber has faced kind of really bad, fierce backlash over its refusal to treat its drivers as full-time employees rather than independent contractors. Of course, they are independent contractors, but some legal people would disagree. Some saying that, oh, well, they're drivers, they're actually employees, they're all these different things. People saying that Uber is a taxi service and yada, yada. But why do we need to classify businesses by type, you know? Like, what does it matter if Uber is a taxi service or if it's not a taxi service? It doesn't particularly matter. Besides, if the Uber people were unhappy with the wages, they could always do something else, right? I mean, Uber's not meant to be a main source of income, so they're not really locked into the minimum wage thing. So there's lots of problems with it. But anyway, the be your own boss thing is starting to be a pretty big industry, actually. The company is currently appealing a ruling in California that granted class action status to a lawsuit brought by a group of drivers demanding stronger protections. That's an Uber, by the way. After Seattle, Amazon Flex will be launching in Manhattan, Chicago, Baltimore, Miami, Dallas, Austin, Indianapolis, Atlanta, hey, represent, and Portland. The company has not set a timeline for its expansion. So, of course, Chattanooga is not on that list, but we could be seeing expansion up from Atlanta. I would be surprised to be seeing that in the next 2-3 years, probably, if it takes off, and it probably will. There's not really any reason for it not to. So, exciting new stuff coming out of Amazon. Now, this is something that's indicative of the new economy, I guess, the new digital economy. That's not necessarily the digital economy in the way we think of a digital economy, where everything is, cashless and it's a cashless society and yada yada. Not really in that sense, but more the new economy in that there's new ways of making money that just weren't possible previously. Note that a smartphone, Android smartphone, is a requirement, right? So that's already sort of indicative of the high-techness of the field. So what would happen is you would use your Android smartphone to get these packages, and then you would use that Android smartphone to get directions to the place where you're supposed to deliver those packages. And really, it's not a terrible idea. I can see this taking off and being a reasonably okay service continuing into the next few years. We might even see this being the main method of delivery for Amazon, is Amazon simply using its own fleet of delivery vehicles to deliver packages, and using UPS and the USPS and FedEx as sort of a reserve, as a secondary, which I wouldn't really have a problem with, again, because Not that I have anything against, say, USPS drivers or UPS drivers or FedEx drivers or DHL drivers or any of these other delivery services. But again, a company can do what a company wants. And if the folks over at Amazon want to not have to deal with a third-party delivery system, then more power to Amazon, I suppose. Which is really what we're seeing, where companies are wanting to do everything on the company time, right? Companies are wanting to do things with with company resources, and if you can outsource that to individuals rather than to FedEx or U-Haul or what have you, not U-Haul, but you get the meaning, then that makes things a whole lot easier for the company individually, or for the company dealing with individuals instead of dealing with companies. Plus, if you're dealing with companies like, say, a FedEx, then those companies can tend to want to demand more money because the company will feel that it has more leverage, and so then Amazon has to shell out more, and you start to run into a bunch of problems. So this is a smart move on Amazon's part if it works. That's the thing. If no one tries to shut it down, it'll be great. So if nobody complains, it'll be awesome. But probably people will start complaining and saying, oh, it's just the worst thing ever because we aren't getting paid $30 an hour or whatever. We're not getting benefits. We're not getting health care. We're not getting insurance for working part-time. People will start complaining, and that's just the way it is. That's just the nature of things, isn't it? Oh, well, it'll be a nice thing while it lasts anyway, but how long it will last is up to people. It's up to us, really, how long this thing lasts. If we give it positive feedback, it'll last as long as Amazon does. So what can go wrong, possibly? This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell, here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Check us out on the brand new Hot News Cam, only at Hot News Talk Radio. Just go to YouTube and search for Hot News Talk Radio, and you'll be able to watch us streaming live over internet with our webcam over there on hotnewstalkradio.com on YouTube. Also, check us out on the website, hotnewstalkradio.com. Get us on your smartphone. Search for the TuneIn Radio app in your local app store, in your phone's app store, and then just search for Hot News Talk Radio after that, and you'll be all set to listen to us streaming live from your smartphone at Hot News Talk Radio and hotnewstalkradio.com. So really, there's not any excuse to not listen to us. If you're not listening to us, you probably you're computer illiterate or you're radio illiterate, and that's the only reason, really. There's no reason to not listen to us at this point. Well, there's even more news about Mars from NASA, which is seemingly now confirming the existence of liquid water on Mars, although that seems to be a bit of a stretch, but whatever. Liquid water exists on the surface of Mars during the planet's warmer seasons, according to new research published in Nature Geosciences. This revelation comes from new spectral data gathered by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or MRO, a spacecraft that studies the planet from orbit. The orbiter analyzed the chemistry of weird dark streaks that have been known to appear and disappear seasonally on the Martian surface. The analysis confirms that these streaks are formed by briny or salty water flowing downhill on Mars. Now, I don't know how they confirm that because, again, they claim to have done analysis on these dark streaks, but I don't know how they've done that without physically going down there and scooping it up and analyzing it in a rover, and I don't think that's happened. So I'm not entirely certain how they've determined that there's liquid water on Mars. I'm not saying that because I don't want there to be. I'm saying that because I want there to be, accuracy, I guess. If there's liquid water on Mars, that's awesome and that's cool, but you also have to kind of prove it because that's science. You can say something and I want to believe it, but you have to show me proof for me to actually believe it, and we're not really seeing that at NASA yet. Anyway, NASA's advertised these findings as a solution to a major Mars mystery. Does the red planet truly have liquid water on its surface? Researchers have known that water exists in ice form on Mars, but it's never been confirmed if water can remain in a liquid state. The space agency is now claiming that we have the answer to that question. This isn't the first study to suggest liquid water is present in some form on Mars. Scientists have theorized for years that Mars was once home to a large ocean more than, they claim 4 billion years ago, and recent findings from the Mars Curiosity rover suggest that liquid water does exist just underneath the Martian surface. The discovery of water on Mars has almost become a joke among planetary scientists. Alfred McEwen, a planetary geologist at the Planetary Image Research Laboratory, who also worked on this research, wrote in the Scientific American that the studies have become extremely commonplace, saying, "Congratulations, you discovered water on Mars for the 1000th time." So it seems that people have kind of known that there was water on Mars for a really long time. It's just that it, I guess, hasn't been made public, or it's not been made really public, or what? We're not really seeing a whole lot out of this. Well, out of this, I guess. This doesn't really mean a whole lot at the present time. I mean, it's huge, but there's not really any practical application for what we can do with that right now. In the future, yes, but right now, while it is a big discovery, there's not really a whole lot that can be done with it so far. But we'll see, right? We just got to wait and see how far this goes. How far does the rabbit hole go? How much water is there on Mars is another question that should be asked. Is there enough water on Mars to, say, sustain life? Is there enough water on Mars to grow food? All sorts of different questions have to be asked. How expensive would it be to desalinate the water on Mars, which would be to take the salt out of it? We just don't know at this point. Hey, we're getting new numbers in, by the way, about VW, the Volkswagen scandal, which seems to only be getting worse, by the way. We have new figures showing which cars or which brands are affected by this new scandal. So far, it appears that there are 5 million Volkswagen cars, that's commercial passenger cars. Commercial vehicles have 1.8 million affected, Audi 2.1 million, Skoda 1.2 million, and Seat, S-E-A-T, 700,000. So the numbers are quite big so far. Those are the diesel vehicles, which are fitted with this weird sort of, I guess, cheating system. That might be the way to put it, but the numbers are still pouring in. We'll have to bring you updates on that as much as we can here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. This is Hot News Talk Radio. Caller, you are on the air. What's going on? Caller. All right, whatever. Hey, it happens. One time, this is funny. One time I had somebody call in asking me to install a satellite dish on the side of their house. Now, I would be more than willing to do that, but I'm not really equipped to at the moment. Plus, I have to fill another 7 minutes and 55 seconds talking into a microphone, so I can't really affix a satellite dish to the side of your house. Sorry. As much as I want to, I really can't. So the VW scandal is getting, well, a little bit worse because now Germany is investigating VW for fraud. Yeah. Volkswagen AG, or VAG, which is a pretty funny name when you try to pronounce it, just keeps coming. The bad news for it keeps coming, I should say. Yesterday, there were claims that VW parts supplier Bosch warned the company all the way back in 2007 not to sell cars to customers which still had the emissions-defeating software installed. And today, Reuters reports that the German prosecutors are investigating the company on possible fraud charges. Last week, the U.S. Department of Justice announced that it is also investigating possible fraud at VW. Although U.S. diesel emissions regulations are much stricter than those in the European Union, which is a little bit funny, actually, the latter mainly focused on CO2 targets. Alexander Dobrindt, the German transport minister, has accused the company of falsifying its EU tests as well. The issue are Volkswagen Auto Group's 1.8-liter and 2-liter four-cylinder diesel engines. VW claimed, to be able to meet U.S. emissions rules without the use of expensive ARIA injection, whatever that means, something the rivals like Mercedes had to employ in order to comply. Volkswagen uses common engines across its different brands, and now Audi has also said that 2.1 million of the 11 million diesel engine cars sold with the so-called defeat device were from its showrooms. It's reasonable to expect that the scandal will affect other VAG brands like Skoda and Seat, which we now have discovered it has. And we're still watching to see if larger V6 diesel engines used will also fall foul of the law. And again, it appears that that has happened with this new news about the commercial engines. So we're not sure the whole number so far. We're getting estimates and we're getting some numbers from the EPA, but we're not getting the whole equation yet. So we'll have to wait and see on that as well. As much as I hate to say it, we have to wait and see on that. But fraud is really that's an extraordinary charge coming out of Germany. And also it appears the U.S. is also investigating for possible fraud of VW. So the future of Volkswagen is not looking too bright right now. So what does that mean? I mean, seriously, what does that mean for the future of VW? We don't really know. There's not any telling so far what could happen to VW coming up next in the future? Is VW going to go under? That would be disastrous for us locally, of course, because the city of Chattanooga has invested quite a lot of money in this new Volkswagen plant. And if it were to close, Volkswagen plant, right? If it were to close, can you imagine the disaster that would happen as a result of that? Now, that's worst case scenario. I doubt that would happen, but I don't want to. I don't want to call it too early. If you get my meaning, we don't want to say anything conclusive too early. Certainly here at the office, we've been discussing this quite a bit, and really, to be quite honest with you, we're not sure. There's not any telling what could happen to VW coming up in the future, because there could be some new development that comes out in the next year or next month or week or day that totally changes everything that we thought. It could be that some supplier, like Bosch as an example, was totally knowledgeable of what was going on and in fact was facilitating it, and that would cause blame to shift over there. And there's all sorts of different little details that could totally shift how this investigation moves forward. Plus, this is only a fraud investigation, not an accusation yet of fraud. If the investigation comes up with something conclusive, that's when things will start to get worrying. But then again, Volkswagen could, of course, be purchased by another company, Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi, one of these companies, heaven forbid GM. But you get my meaning. Volkswagen is a huge, huge company, and it doesn't just deal in automotives. Volkswagen deals with quite a few other things as well. So it going under is kind of unlikely. Worst case scenario, there's some sort of, I would say anyway, worst case scenario realistically would be some sort of oversight committee being formed, perhaps some sort of order to not do this or that or something. Maybe Winterkorn goes to prison, although I really doubt that, seeing as he resigned and liability has been separated there. So really, again, there's not any telling conclusively what could happen with Volkswagen at this point. So speculation, while it's fun, is just that, speculation. So any sort of speculation we might make here on Hot News Talk Radio is just that. We're going to report the facts as well. Of course, you can expect more here at Hot News Live at 5, coming up at, 5 o'clock here on Hot News Talk Radio, where we talk about the news. In fact, it is the only, as far as I know, 5 o'clock local news show on radio at all. Period. And it's right here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com and on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone. That's Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. I've been reading a little bit about something called biohacking, and it's really, I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of both fascinating and terrifying, and it's all sorts of things all at the same time. So what, pray tell, is biohacking? Well, it's just that, biological hacking. So we're talking about indie genetic design. We're talking about modifying the human body with external parts or internal parts sometimes, like as an example, something called wetware, which would be as opposed to software. Wetware is something which is put into the human body. A popular thing, of course, is customized RFID chips used to unlock doors or your phone or your car or whatever. RFID chips are pretty versatile. There's a lot you can do with them, and inserting one into the human body is an exciting prospect. It's really kind of interesting. I don't know how that's going to be received, especially because you have the doom and gloom guys who think that that's the mark of the beast and it's going to be the end of the world. I disagree, but you can think that if you want to. You can be wrong all day if you want. But anyway, you can get an RFID chip inserted into you if you want, if it's consensual, of course. That would be the main thing. There's also magnets. People are putting magnets into their fingertips in order to feel magnetic waves and in order to feel magnetic fields and in order to pick up paper clips with their fingertips and all sorts of odd things. And really, the world of wetware is getting to be kind of weird. But what about the future? Like right now, it's an infant technology. Right now, it's not really anything particularly, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but it's not anything particularly innovative at the moment. But think about in the future where people will be voluntarily amputating their hands in order to get a prosthetic that operates better than the original, or at least they perceive it to operate better than the original. That would be a weird world to live in, where people who have had their legs blown off at the knee would actually be better off than the rest of us because they'd have better prosthetic legs and we have real ones. As unlikely as that might seem, it's technically possible pretty soon. The world of technology is a weird one, and we're going to be covering it every step of the way here on Hot News Talk Radio and Digital Drive, right here. Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com, and on the TuneIn Radio app. Be sure to check out the Hot News Cam at hotnewstalkradio.com. Just search for Hot News Talk Radio on YouTube as well to see our YouTube stream. And Clutch with Keon Rose is coming up next here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing about.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Here you are, working to keep your customers happy and to manage your cash flow. IRS problems are the last thing you need, but here they are, flapping about you like vultures. Get help from Eric Pelton and his team of accountants at E.J. Pelton Company. Audits, letters, proposed return changes, 1099s, penalty threats. Pelton Tax Resolution Services brings peace of mind and helps you keep more of what you've earned. EJPelton.com. Offices on Brainerd Road and in Saudi Daisy, just north of the Bilo. That's E.J. Pelton. Call 622-3156. Think ahead, 622-3156.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week was the former Secretary of Education, Mr. William Bennett, whose controversial new book titled America the Strong is getting ready to hit bookstores this month. Don't miss a thought-provoking one-on-one conversation with William Bennett this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu, the president of Planned Parenthood on Capitol Hill, where a fight's underway over federal funding for the group, which has come under fire for a series of videos.
The question before us is, does Planned Parenthood really need federal subsidy?
House Committee Chair Jafin Chaffetz lashing out at the group for what he called exorbitant spending. Cecile Richards, CEO, testifying.
The federal funding that Planned Parenthood receives allows our doctors and clinicians at our health centers to provide birth control, cancer screenings, and testing and treatment for sexually transmitted infections.
Volkswagen now says its commercial vehicles and cars from its Spanish unit are among the 11 million fitted with a diesel engine that can cheat on emissions tests, and the FAA investigating the death of an extreme sports star who crashed into a tree during a skydiving stunt at a Northern California golf course. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
There's a lot in the news today about Mars having liquid water. That seems to be the big announcement. We're also seeing some news about some vandalization of a Saints memorial. Kind of odd. Lots in the news. We'll be talking about that at 5 o'clock. But for now, we have some, well, I don't know if disturbing is the right word, but it's certainly not in our favor anyway. The U.S. is defending what's called safe harbor, saying that it never used indiscriminate surveillance. So the United States is blatantly lying yet again, giving no reason whatsoever to trust the state. But whatever. The United States mission to the European Union has responded to the opinion by the Court of Justice of the European Union's Advocate General, Yves Bott, that the current safe harbor scheme might be illegal because of NSA spying. Now, it might be illegal. Wow. It also claims that the U.S. does not and has not engaged in indiscriminate surveillance of anyone, including ordinary European citizens, yet another lie, as reported by Ars Technica last week. The ability of companies to transfer the personal data of European Union citizens to the U.S. is under threat because of Bott believes, that's the person, that the safe harbor's privacy safeguards are inadequate. In particular, Bott was concerned about what he called the mass indiscriminate surveillance of European Union citizens under the PRISM program, which is believed to give the NSA direct access to all personal data held by Facebook and other U.S. companies in their databases. Now, that's worth noting right there, that the U.S. is denying this, and yet it's kind of been basically proven to be true. So again, zero reason whatsoever to trust the feds, but that's not really surprising. I don't trust them anyway. I mean, there's zero reason to. When have they ever actually been proven to tell the truth? The feds would say the sky is blue, and that's probably not true that day because the sky would be green. So there's just no trusting them ever. That includes, of course, every branch, military, Coast Guard, even, any branch of Fed. I do not trust them because there is absolutely no reason to at any point, really. I mean, think about it. Why should we trust any word that comes out of their mouths? It's just been proven that they lie consistently. I remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident where that turned out to be, nothing. And then there was the whole thing with, you can name pretty much anything you want. Any incident you ever want that the government's been involved in, there's probably been a lie told about it. I mean, for heaven's sake, remember the Iran-Contra incident? Now, that's, of course, kind of ancient history, but we have no idea what's going on right now. Think about this. Since we're on the topic of PRISM and all that, think about this. Remember back before we knew anything about the NSA, before we knew anything at all about the NSA other than it was operating in the best way to ensure that the United States had the best possible national security to protect us against boogeymen such as Al-Qaeda, and now ISIS is the new thing, and all sorts of other boogeymen that may or may not actually be doing anything. We'll defend against those things that we actually created in the first place, but whatever. And if you ever say anything bad about national security, well, then you were probably a terrorist sympathizer or even worse, a Democrat. So there's not really any reason to ever question what the NSA does. But then the Snowden revelations come out from, of course, former NSA contractor Edward Snowden, showing that the NSA was totally lying, A, about its goals, which would be national security, which this does not protect, and B, about the whole thing about not spying on people, which the NSA totally does, despite denying it wholeheartedly. So then, of course, this was met with backlash. We had several people within government saying that Edward Snowden should be hanged, several people saying that he should man up and come back to the States. I see no reason to do that. And, of course, he ended up being stuck in Russia, not due to his own personal choice, just because his visa was revoked at a very opportune moment, which landed him stuck in Russia and he can't leave. So, yeah, he's been granted political asylum, and we've been pretty much continuing to the present day from there. Now, what do we learn from all that? Well, quite a few things about the NSA, but also consider we learn a lot about ourselves culturally, where there were so many people who were totally unwilling to believe that the NSA could ever do any wrong. because if you just use the phrase national security, then everything will be okay. If I just say, well, it's for national security, why I'm killing innocent civilians and all these different things, then suddenly it's okay. And if you ever question it, you're probably a terrorist sympathizer and all these different things. And then you have people defending the NSA, notably John McCain, notably Dianne Feinstein, who are two supposedly politically opposed people who can both agree that we need to spy on U.S. citizens. So I guess that's okay. Now, also, this isn't just us. This is a situation where I actually don't have to prove that this affects us, because we know it does. I have to prove that this affects other people too. So this is affecting people in the European Union who are understandably kind of upset that the United States has been spying on foreign people who have done nothing wrong whatsoever. So, at least that we know of. So we're seeing the PRISM program used to collect metadata being used on foreign people, not foreign criminals, not foreign terrorists, suspected terrorists anyway, not foreign dignitaries. No, just regular foreign people who happen to live in another country, who by merit of living in another country magically don't have as many rights as we do, or something like that, because in the view of the federal government, your rights end where the borders do, or 10 miles away from where the borders end, or something like that. If you are different, you have no rights. In a statement that was issued yesterday, the United States mission to the European Union, effectively the U.S. Embassy to the European Union, even though the EU is not technically a country in and of itself, it may as well be because it sort of acts like one sometimes. They desperately tried to refute the Advocate General's logic. That's because U.S. companies will be unable to rely on the safe harbor framework, and their data transfers across the Atlantic will be illegal under European Union law if the Court of Justice in the European Union follows his arguments, as usually happens. The U.S. mission writes, the Advocate General's opinion notes that it was required to accept the facts as found by the Irish High Court. There was, however, no actual fact-finding in this case. Instead, the Irish High Court concluded on basis of exhibits to a plaintiff's affidavits that the accuracy of his allegations regarding U.S. intelligence practices is not in dispute, but that's simply not the case. Yada, yada. The United States is desperately trying to defend itself and failing miserably because no one believes them. That's the thing. They can come out with as many statements as they want. They can say that they feed the poor, and that would be a lie too. They can say they do all these wonderful things. There's zero reason to believe them at this point because they lied about surveillance before. There's no reason for them to not lie again. So why believe them? The U.S. mission to the European Union, according to Ars Technica, attempts to argue that the PRISM program that the Advocate General's opinion discusses is in fact targeted against particular valid foreign intelligence targets. Who verifies, or rather who determines what that is, who knows, is duly authorized by law and strictly complies with a number of publicly disclosed controls and limitations. Of course, being targeted against particular valid foreign intelligence targets is pretty worthless, given that all foreigners are considered fair game by the NSA and have no legal protections against surveillance in U.S. law. When Snowden's leaks about PRISM appeared in The Guardian, James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, emphasized this point in his official response. He wrote this: PRISM cannot be used to intentionally target any U.S. citizen or any U.S. person or anyone located in the United States. By contrast, information collected under this program is among the most important and valuable foreign intelligence information we collect. For what reason, he can't talk about because national security. So there's, again, no reason to trust him on that. Why would we trust somebody who works with spies to tell the truth, right? Think about it. There's no reason to trust him. So I don't believe anything that he says. If a Fed's mouth is moving, he's probably lying. Or to be fair, she's probably lying, to be politically correct. Oh, that's another phrase we're going to talk about later today, by the way, politically correct, and how that doesn't actually mean anything. But anyway, so the Irish High Court noted the revelations made by Edward Snowden demonstrated a significant overreach on the part of the NSA and other similar agencies. In addition, it said, apart from the fact that decisions relating to access to personal data are taken on the basis of United States law, citizens of the Union, that's the European Union, have no effective right to be heard on the question of the surveillance and interception of their data. So the U.S. mission's attempt to portray the NSA's activities is just a little bit of spying on a few foreign intelligence targets with strict oversight to prevent any possible privacy problems. That looks rather implausible, to say the least, says the Irish High Court. And I, oddly enough, tend to agree with the Irish High Court. Not that I'm defending the European Union by any means. I am, however, defending the rights of Europeans as a group, as a whole, I would suppose. Think about it this way. Think back to the late 1700s. If you were to ask, say, George Washington, does a European have fewer rights than a resident of North America? He would probably say, no, we have exactly the same rights because these rights are inalienable. They're granted by God. They're not granted by constitution or by man. Thus, how dare we, or how dare they, I suppose, in the federal government, say that the people in the European Union, or imply, I suppose, because I haven't said this implicitly, that people in the European Union somehow magically have fewer rights than those of us here in the United States? Because your rights don't end where the borders do. It doesn't work that way. If they did, then you may as well not have them in the first place. If your rights suddenly disappeared as soon as you cross the border, then rights are so fickle they may as well not even exist in the first place, to be quite honest with you. Think about that. Rights don't come from the Constitution. It's a piece of paper which recognizes it officially on a federal level, but your rights don't come from that document. The Constitution is more a recognition of rights which we already know exist. So where then do they come from? Well, of course, they come from a higher power. So then how can they be denied legally or even really in any sort of meaningful way by any man? They can't be. That's the thing. They can be denied in the sense that they're not going to recognize them, but they can't take away your rights. Rights can't really be taken away. They can only be not recognized. So the United States is ceasing to recognize the rights of people who reside in the European Union. And it's not unique to people who reside in the European Union. It's Americans, too, whose rights are simply not being recognized by the feds. They have no regard for your rights. They don't really care about your rights. They might give the illusion that they do. They might put the implication that they may possibly consider caring about your rights at some point, but really they couldn't possibly, because these NSA spying operations are ongoing. These are the same people who would argue that we need to sacrifice security in order to, or rather liberty in order to obtain security. And these are the people who, of course, would go directly against the ideas of Benjamin Franklin, who, again, the founding father, but he doesn't really matter because his words were from the 1700s and really don't apply to modern society, if you were to listen to people who work in the federal government anyway. So trying to claim that the NSA doesn't really carry out mass surveillance on EU citizens, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, is just one line of attack on the Advocate General's opinion. Another is in some ways even more disturbing. The U.S.'s mission statement says, the underlying issue here also goes far beyond the safe harbor framework. The Advocate General's reasoning would undercut the ability of other countries, businesses, and citizens to rely upon negotiated arrangements with the European Commission. Now, what does that mean? Well, Ars Technica has a really good write-up on that, saying what the U.S. seems to be complaining about here is the fact that, in the Advocate General's opinion, the European Commission could not simply decide unilaterally that the safe harbor scheme was perfectly fine. By the way, I should explain safe harbor. The idea behind safe harbor is telecoms would keep your information essentially at the request of the feds, and then again at the request of the feds would then hand it over. So that's the whole safe harbor thing. So what the U.S. seems to be complaining about is just that. The safe harbor scheme was perfectly fine, they say, but that courts like the one in Ireland still had the right and duty to consider whether that was actually the case on the basis of the law and the facts. In other words, the U.S. mission was unhappy that the courts in Europe are daring to overrule the politicians when the latter make a decision that is incorrect from a legal point of view. So basically what they're implying here is that the European Union has to mesh with the laws and the ideals of the U.S. Congress at any given moment, which is, of course, attempting to create a vassal state out of the European Union, a vassal to, of course, the United States. And that's really unrealistic in expectations and is just asking for some sort of unrest or uprising. A very dangerous position on the side of the United States. So the drama continues, and we'll be covering that here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. By the way, if anything more comes out about this that is, of course, newsworthy, we'll talk about that on Hot News Live at 5 here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com on every weekday from 5 to 6 here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. By the way, Tex is back. We're happy to have him back. He's on from 6 to 7 right here on Hot News Talk Radio. His show is Cowboy with Tex right here, Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240. Following this show is Clutch with Keon Rose. He's our resident sports expert here at Hot News Talk Radio, and he's on from 1 to 2 every weekday at Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. A man has been sentenced to 21 months after test firing a laser at a sheriff's helicopter. Yeah, California man's been sentenced on Monday to 1 year and 9 months in prison for firing a green laser at a Kern County sheriff's helicopter. Ars Technica previously reported this. Barry Lee Bowser was convicted after a 2-day trial. That's not very long. Bowser is the 13th person to be charged on laser-related allegations by federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of California, which has taken the lead in prosecuting laser strike cases nationwide. His sentence is less, than some of the harsher sentences that have recently been imposed by federal courts and then later overturned. In May of 2015, the 9th U.S. District Court of Appeals found that California's high school student's 30-month prison sentence for firing a laser pointer at a small aircraft was also too extreme, concluding that he should get no more than 10 months after pleading guilty to pointing the laser at a small aircraft as it approached the Burbank Airport near L.A. back in 2012. So the question, of course, is that a harsh sentence? Is 30 days in jail a harsh sentence for firing a laser at an aircraft? I would say no, because we're talking about a potentiality for a death occurring. You could potentially cause someone to die for pointing a laser at them while they're flying. If they become so disoriented that, say, especially in a helicopter, they lose control and crash into an object, that's your fault. You are directly responsible now for the deaths of at least one person. That's pretty severe. And so that's what the courts are trying to protect against by setting an example here with these, what some would consider harsh sentences. I would say harsh in a good way, but that's just me. So what's going on here? Well, the basis of this whole argument is people are pointing laser pointers at aircraft, be they helicopter or small airplane or larger 747, 777, whatever. People are pointing airplanes at aircraft is the point. That disrupts the pilots, potentially blinds them, disorients them to the point where they are unable to fly. They get headaches, sickness, what have you. It's far more dangerous than you might think. And so pointing a laser at an aircraft is not only irresponsible and stupid, it's also criminal. So if you ever get the idea that that would be a good idea, I would drop that idea ASAP, because you're really, really pushing it there. Sometimes you're not caught, sometimes you are. Most of the time people are caught, so I wouldn't risk it. And we're seeing this coming out of California more often than not, which is kind of strange. I guess in California they have this odd idea that that's okay to do. I don't know. Who knows, really? Over in New Zealand now, on the international side, the U.S. government says that Kim.com paid pirates $3 million for movies and that he should be extradited. In a New Zealand courtroom, the U.S. government has begun making its case as to why Mega Upload founder Kim.com, real name is Kim Schwartz, should face criminal copyright charges. .com, who was arrested at his Auckland home after a dramatic raid in 2012, has long argued that he should not be extradited to the Eastern District of Virginia. Today, Crown lawyer Christine Gordon, representing the U.S., read out loud communications between Mega Upload executives and users who uploaded copyrighted material to the site. One of those power users, nicknamed TH by the FBI, was allegedly paid $50,000 in rewards between 2006 and 2011 because of the traffic his files drove to Mega Upload, Gordon told the court. Now, these are, of course, allegations. The informant, I guess, TH, was the subject of 1,200 copyright takedown requests, she says, according to the New Zealand Herald. Gordon told the court that nothing was done to stop TH's infringement, and Mega Upload increased the user's server space to 2.5 terabytes to make room for the 30,000 files he allegedly hosted. When TH asked for more money, .com responded tersely. In an email read aloud by Gordon, he stated, "You and your friends are at most 1% of our traffic, so please don't overestimate your importance to us. I think we have been fair to you." These are, of course, allegations. In total, the FBI says that $3 million was paid to heavy uploaders between 2006 and 2011. Mega Upload stopped its reward system in 2011. Overall, Gordon opened her case last week by saying the site amounted to a big fraud, but conducted a fairly simple conducted in a fairly simple manner, according to an Associated Press report. Behind the scenes, respondents admitted their businesses broke the law. Sometimes they enjoyed the fact that they were making their money by breaking the law. Sometimes they worried about protection and pondered what actions they should take to, and I'm quoting here Mr.com's words, she says, counter the justice system. Now, again, these are all allegations. These can't be proven at this point. But it's all very interesting because the U.S. government seems to be most concerned about copyrights than anything. For some odd reason, the U.S. is really, really focused on the whole copyright thing. And I'm not really seeing any reason for it other than just some companies are complaining, because if they're worried about damages, why not take that to, say, a civil suit or whatever? The U.S. government has a vast amount of records from the mega upload servers as well as Skype chats. Gordon told the court about a 2010 conversation .com allegedly had over Skype in his native German, in which he allegedly told a coworker, at some point, a judge will be convinced about how evil we are. Now, these are all very interesting allegations. I'm interested to see how this case continues. Now, Kim.com was the CEO of Mega Upload, which is a website, or was a website, I should say, that was a file hosting website. And what it did was just that. It hosted files that were copied online by users and by uploaders. So is there really anything criminal going on there? Copyright is sort of a sticky situation. Copyright is a sensitive topic as well, because some people value copyrights quite a bit more than others. Some countries have different copyright laws than others. And the internet is really a nationless entity. No one country can lay claim to the internet, not the United States, not the European Union, not Russia, not China, not Brazil or Argentina or any country. No country can lay claim individually to the United States, to the internet. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. It exists in essentially every country on Earth, especially because it can be blasted via satellite. So no country can lay claim to the internet. So if Kim.com broke a law in, say, the United States, but has never been to the United States and never had direct dealings with anyone residing there, can he be extradited? That's the question that's going to be answered in this New Zealand court. And questions are still pouring in, and answers are still being poured in, I guess. We'll have to wait and see. This is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Don't forget, Clutch is up next with Keon Rose. His show is our resident expert sports show, the resident expert being Keon Rose, and he talks about, well, sports and local sports, not so local sports, and all sorts of sports. He's sort of a man of all trades when it comes to sports. So I guess he's a jack of all sports. Walmart today is announcing an expansion of its online grocery shopping service with launches in 8 different additional markets, as well as plans for a continued rollout to several more regions in the months ahead. The news comes at a time when a number of startups and larger companies, including Amazon, are vying to become consumers' preferred online grocery delivery service. Now, this is a prime example of, well, to put it in simpler terms, it's a good example of competition. There we go. I almost said convenience. Competition. It's a prime example of competition, which should happen in a free market. We're seeing big companies trying to be the go-to service. We're seeing small startups trying to be the go-to service for grocery delivery. And now Walmart's getting involved. And it's sort of up in the air which service is going to take off. And it's sometimes not even a question of which service is the best. It's which service is most marketed, which service is best marketed. Think about Betamax versus VHS. Betamax was technically better, but VHS had better marketing and was a little bit cheaper, so it won out. Same situation we're seeing here now with grocery delivery services. So which one is going to be the cheapest, the most accessible, and the most convenient? That's the one that will win. We'll have to wait and see. This is Digital Drive here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com. Check us out on the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone. That's Hot News Talk Radio on the TuneIn app right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.